And welcome back, or if you're new here, just welcome to my channel. My name is Rusty, and this is where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And welcome to day 5 of Shark Week. We are going to now move on to 2003's Open Water. This is my little double feature Blu-ray. So we have Open Water. Now, in 1998, in real life, Tom and Eileen Lonergan disappeared off of the Australian coast in 1998 after going out on a tourist scuba diving boat and were left behind. This is the fictionalized story of what could have possibly happened to them. And we'll discuss that when we're through with the movie. Now, in the movie, instead of Tom and Eileen, we have Susan and Daniel. They leave home for a vacation to the Caribbean instead of Australia. They decide to go on a tourist scuba outing. They didn't really pick a very good one because this was all rushed. And instead of, taking time out of their busy schedules and planning it well, they instead kind of took the cheap way, cheap motel, cheap scuba diving trip and all that because they didn't have time to plan. So we get introduced to these two people whom I like very much. They did a very good job playing them. Did I introduce this movie? Directed by Chris Kentis and written by Chris Kentis, starring Blanchard Ryan, Daniel Travis, and Saul Stein. Now, I really liked both of these characters. They did very well, and I really felt for them. So they picked two really good actors to make you feel for them. So, as I said, we get some character development, tourist shopping, things like that, as we get to know these two to have you feel some emotion. And then they head out on the boat. Now, there's a lot of really nice underwater reef scenes, stuff like that. They, of course, are pushing it to the limit of the time they're supposed to be back. And one pair of people, it's actually two guys, are miscounted. Now, how this occurred, okay, there was a couple, a man and a woman. This dipshit forgot his mask, so he couldn't go scuba diving. So his wife, she went instead. It was my fault, you go ahead and scuba dive. So there's one person out of 20 left on the boat. He didn't go scuba diving. Now this other couple, he's doing fine, but she's getting sick. She can't equalize the pressure in her ears. She's not having a good time. So they come back onto the boat, at which time the mate checks off 3 people. Okay? So he checks off 3 people. There's the guy that didn't have the mask, and then there's the couple that came back on board. Now, the guy that didn't have his mask was like, hey, can I use your mask, to the lady? And the lady was like, sure, but then one of the instructors was like, no, you can't go down by yourself. You have to go with somebody. So her whatever he was, husband, boyfriend, brother, who knows, but he agrees to go with the guy because the guy can't go without a buddy. So they get back into the water. The 2 guys get back into the water. Dipshit in the front did not see that. Okay, so they go diving. Now everybody, time's up. Everybody comes back on board except for Susan and Daniel, who are off playing around. When the 2 guys come back up on board, He's like, thank you very much. I wouldn't have got to scuba dive if you hadn't have done this. I appreciate both of your help. Blah, blah, blah. Well, dipshit counts them two guys again. So when 20 people were on board, they took the fuck off. Fuck the correct time. What matters is we had 20 people go in, we got 20 people checked off, let's go. That's how that occurred. So, and they didn't notice 2 tanks were still missing, and they didn't notice their fucking bags sitting over there underneath the bench. So they left, and I explained how that occurred. It was very plausible, and it's very close to the real story, actually. The boat arrives back at the dock, does not notice the bags, and we are put back out into the ocean. Now, of course, Susan and Daniel have come up, found the boat gone, and the nightmare begins. So, it doesn't take long before they see the first shark. They suffer some jellyfish stings. They get more and more despondent. They're getting seasick from the waves, of course. Hours have went by. They end up falling asleep where they separate. That's one of the scenes, they fall asleep, and both of them, because they are wearing their vests, so they end up like drifting apart, pretty far apart actually. And she's actually bumped awake by a shark, and she starts screaming. This alerts him. They manage to find each other, and they get back together. So they've drifted apart. They manage to swim to each other. They become more and more scared. More and more sharks are checking them out. Dan gets very angry. They then, she's like, do you feel better? He's screaming and carrying on about this trip and about these assholes that left them. All very understandable. She ends up getting ill because of that. And of course, we're going to have the blame game, right? This is your fault. She blames him. He blames her. How dare you blame me? I'm just pissed off. You're blaming me. What the fuck? This is your idea. If we'd have not come early and did all of this stuff, we wouldn't have hired these cheap motherfuckers to go out on. So that's also understandable. So they play the blame game. They see ships, of course, sort of like the first movie there that we talked about a while ago. Or I talked about a while ago. You would have talked about it yesterday, or you had to listen to me talk about it yesterday. So they never get seen. They try to swim towards a sea buoy. He ends up accidentally dropping his knife, and then we get the big one, and that is where the shark, a shark decides to take a bite out of Daniel. So he's bleeding throughout the night. It's very scary. A thunderstorm happens. There's blood in the water. She tries to patch it up. It's a lot of really tense, anxious scenes. This movie will make you anxious as fuck. The jellyfish really got me because if you know my channel, I've talked about this before. I haven't been, even though I live right next to the ocean, I haven't been swimming in the ocean since I was 14. The reason being, 1, I saw Jaws, and 2, I got stung by a jellyfish, very badly stung by a jellyfish. So the jellyfish scene in this movie where they run into a bunch of jellyfish was especially traumatizing to me, because I know what that feels like. And it's not cool. Well, put it this way. I've never went back into the water. So, they're bleeding throughout the night, or he's bleeding throughout the night. Now, the next day, one of the mates on the boat, he finds the 2 bags, and he finds IDs in it. He ends up calling the police. They go check out the motel room. They're not there. Oh my God, we left them, and a massive search begins. That doesn't really matter too much since Susan realizes when they wake up the next day that Dan is laying in her arms dead, which is very sad. He had bled to death. We get a similar scene in number 2, but so she ends up freaking out as you would. She lets his body drift away, where she actually has to watch him be ripped to shreds by a pack of sharks. And, of course, in a feeding frenzy, they're everywhere. So she begins to feel or realize that she is next. She gets very sad, very despondent, very scared, and she takes off her gear, and she drowns herself. She just goes underwater and disappears. The credits roll where we see a shark being gutted. Some shark that was caught is like gutted. And the people are looking at the contents of its stomach, which is, I understand, what people like to do when they catch sharks, because they have a very slow digestion and they'll eat anything. So it's supposed to be some kind of curiosity thing when they kill sharks, is to see what's in their stomach. And in the stomach of this particular shark, they find Dan's waterproof camera. And they're kind of like, wow, a shark will eat anything. I wonder if it still works, if there's any film on it. And then the movie ends for good. So, like I said, to be what this movie is, it's way too short for me, but then again, it's a really short story because there's not much known about it. It's just a fictionalized account. But this movie is excellent. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Actually 7.8, but I uptick on International Movie Database to make up for the hatred of horror movies. So I round up. So it's officially a 7.8 out of 10. Now, how does this hold up against the actual real story? Well, what little is in it about the real story is correct. The real people, the real couple, there was a miscount. They're assuming that it's kind of like what happened in this movie. There was a miscount. They were left. Their bags, their tanks were with them, so they didn't see that in real life. Their bags were on the boat. It was the next day that they discovered the bags on the boat, and there was a massive search off the coast of Queensland, I believe. And you know, there was a massive search for them that never found anything. Now, were they eaten by sharks? Officially, the official inquiries, scientists say no. And the reason is because their stuff washed up on the shores of Queensland. And it was her wetsuit, a dive slate, which is waterproof, that she had written on. And she had written, you know, we were forgotten, we're left at sea, please help us before we die, blah, blah, blah. So they found her wetsuit washed up, the dive slate washed up, both of their dive jackets, her and the guys, what was their names? Tom and Eileen. So both Tom and Eileen's dive jackets washed up, both of their tanks washed up on shore, and one of Eileen's fins. So you have her entire wetsuit a dive slate, both of their dive jackets, both of their tanks, and one of Eileen's fins all washed up on the shores of Queensland. There was not one bit of damage to the wetsuit. There was no damage to the fin. There was no damage, okay, to the vests. I don't think that you're going to be eaten by a shark and there be no damage. There was no rips, no tears, no bites. And they had her entire wetsuit. What the fuck? Well, here's the fuck. When a person becomes dehydrated and delirious, they do crazy things. And one things that they do, if you get hypothermia, you take your clothes off. That's why like people who are like found frozen in Alaska are naked, because they take their clothes off when you get hypothermia. So they got dehydrated. So officially, it's believed that because of this evidence, no damage to the vest, no damage to her her wetsuit, no damage to the fin, the dive slate with the message on it from her, and no damage to the tanks. There was no scrapes or scratches or anything on the tanks. Because of this, they believe that they floated until they became completely dehydrated, delirious, and succumbed to drowning and delirium. She probably did, suffer hypothermia way out there in the ocean. Unfortunately for them, the tide was going out instead of coming in. So they washed on out to sea. They probably floated for days without any water, any food, became dehydrated. One or the other of them drowned. The other one then drowned. And obviously Eileen took her wetsuit off, which did not have one single bit of damage. So, truthfully, this was probably just a fictionalized account, turning what happened to them into a scary story. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't eaten by sharks. They could have been. Maybe they did it after she was naked. But the point is that the shark did not take her clothes off. She had to remove her clothing. And for her wetsuit to wash up intact and undamaged means that she took it off. So yeah. The consensus is that they drowned and died of dehydration or drowned. And they do not believe that there was a shark attack. So, that doesn't change the fact, though, that this is a fucking scary movie. And it's very excellent. And that is Open Water. I really loved this movie. It's one of my favorite little shark bite movies. And I will see you in the next one where we will be doing, what do you think? Open Water 2. Yeah. So, love you, miss you, bye. Always remember and never forget you are a very, very special person. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. This was only 19 minutes. You know what? I'm going to say it. I do subscribe to a couple of horror channels that do like 5 and 6 minute reviews. This isn't a review channel. I want to hear people discuss and deep dive and tell me about a movie. Not just review a movie. Nothing against those who do. I am subscribed to a couple that do that. But I do prefer, like discussion channels, not TikTok style review. I hate TikTok, but doesn't mean I don't like it. There's a couple of them that I really enjoy. I feel bad I can't think of their name right now. But I really enjoy. Oh gosh, it may only be one. It may only be one channel like that I enjoy. But if you get a chance, you should check him out. He manages to do a lot in 7 minutes. I really do like his little mini review things. But mine, this isn't a review channel. I am not just watching shit and reviewing it. This is a spotlight. RWR movie reviews. I really like his channel. He does excellent, and I have found a lot of quality in his content because it lets me know what movies to avoid and what movies that I might be interested in. But I don't really know of another one that does little 5-6 minute things that I find any interest in. But he does it very well. So I really like his channel. Mostly though, that's not me. I feel very pressured to make these very short, and I don't want to. I'm talking about movies that I love, and I just decided I'm not going to do that, I am going to talk about the movie because that's what this channel is about. And yeah. So, love you, miss you, bye-bye, and I will see you in the next one where I will talk about the movie. Like I said, nothing against those that do those reviews. I really love that channel that I just mentioned. So it's not that. It's just that's not what I'm here for. I'm not watching movies that I don't like. I'm not, I did rant about Nope because I hated that fucking movie. But I'll do a rant every once in a while. But I'm here to spotlight movies that I want to bring attention to, and I want to discuss them. So, see you in the next one, where we will do Open Water 2, Adrift, which I really like that movie too. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye.